I live in complete isolation. Everyone who once knew me ignores me. They act like I don't exist. It started a few years ago, back when I was in college. At first, it was subtle. No matter where I went, I felt something watching me. Occasionally, I'd catch someone staring, never blinking, never looking away. And every time I noticed them, my entire day would spiral into disaster. One morning, I woke early and glanced out my window. A fox stood in the field in front of my house, staring directly at my front door, completely still, as if it were waiting. At the time, I thought I had witnessed something rare, something almost magical. But that day became one of the worst of my life. On my way to work, I lost control of my truck and crashed into a ditch. It wasn't totaled, just cosmetic damage, so I had it pulled out and kept driving. When I arrived, 3 customers had canceled their orders. That might not sound like much, but in the aviation industry, when you work on commission, that's an entire month's paycheck gone. When I left work, I slipped and fractured my arm, and by the time I got home, my house had nearly burned down. I brushed it off as a streak of bad luck. We all have them, right? Then, a few weeks later, my brother called me out of nowhere. His best friend had just been diagnosed with a terminal autoimmune disease. He didn't have much time left. That's when I realized something. The day before, we had been out in town, and my brother pointed out a strange man following us through the mall. When he tried to confront him, the man simply disappeared into the crowd, as if he had never been there at all. I told my brother to just ignore it. A few nights later, during a family cookout, my father mentioned seeing something standing in the woods. A black figure, unmoving, watching us from about 70 feet away. I told him, "Dad, please, just ignore it." The next morning, I tried calling him, but his phone had been disconnected. That evening, I got a call. While working on his breaker panel, he suffered a massive heart attack. The 240-volt shock killed him instantly. Then my best friend took his own life. We had been working on my garage together when he saw it. A figure walking back and forth in front of the door. He stepped outside to confront it, and for the first time, someone else saw what I had been living with. His voice trembled when he described it. Its face was human, but wrong, bloated, burned. Its skin looked as if it had melted, then hardened again. It didn't move normally. Its limbs were stiff, yet they flowed unnaturally, like they weren't fully attached. It made no sound. When their eyes met, the thing simply turned the corner of the building and vanished. A week later, he hung himself. The words, "It's watching," were carved into his chest. Word spread fast. Small towns don't keep secrets. With a population of 1,500, it wasn't long before everyone knew. And after that, everyone avoided me. I stopped going into work. Now, I work remotely, locked inside my house. Delivery drivers refuse to knock on my door. They don't even look up when they drop off my groceries. I haven't spoken to another person in months, maybe years. And the worst part, the feeling never goes away. That feeling, you know the one where you just know someone is watching you from the window. I feel it all the time, every second of every day. And then there's the smell. Sometimes it's faint, almost unnoticeable. Other times, it's overwhelming, a mix of burned hair and rotting meat seeping into the walls. But I can't acknowledge it. I can't look, because if I do, someone else will die. I'm doomed to live like this forever. No friends, no family, no wife, no children. The ones who haven't died want nothing to do with me. They won't speak to me. Does anyone know how to stop this thing? Am I cursed? Is this my punishment? Or am I already dead, and I just haven't realized it yet? I'm so tired of being alone. Please, someone talk to me. My last communion. They came when the clock stopped, not with ships or fire, but as a presence, thick as cancer in the air. You don't understand. They were always here, waiting, hungry. 10 years ago, I left my research team to die in the Yukon permafrost. Their voices still haunt my whiskey-laced nights. Don't close the hatch, Elias, as the avalanche buried them. But guilt is a compass. It led them to me. It began with the walls. They sweated, a viscous, iridescent film that smelled of burnt hair and spoiled honey. Then the nightmares, visions of Henrik and Mara, my colleagues, their frost-bitten faces pressed against my bedroom window, whispering, "We're so cold, Elias. Let us in." But when I woke, the glass was smeared with that same oily residue, frozen in clawed streaks. They manifested on the solstice. The temperature plummeted until my breath crystallized into tiny shards that cut my lips. Shadows in the hallway breathed. Then a sound, wet sinew stretched over bone, and I saw it. A thing shaped like Mara, if Mara had been flayed and stitched back together with veins of glowing cobalt. Her jaw unhinged, revealing a nest of translucent tendrils that sang in Henrik's voice. "You left us in the ice. Now we'll freeze the hell out of you." The house warped. Doorways yawned into corridors of pulsating meat, ribbed with cartilage. The floorboards split, oozing black fluid that writhed with half-formed faces. I tried to flee, but the front door fused into a wall of teeth. Behind me, the thing that wore Mara's skin advanced, tendrils whipping like serpents, each tip splitting into a screaming mouth. "They want communion," it hissed. "Not with you, with your regret." It seized me, its touch searing like dry ice. My vision fractured. Suddenly I was back in the Yukon, reliving it, the roar of snow, Mara's hand slapping the hatch as I sealed it. But this time, they showed me the after. How the ice didn't kill them. How it dug them up. How their tendrils slithered into my friends' corpses, puppeteering frozen flesh, feasting on the echoes of their terror. I vomited bile. The creature laughed, a sound like glaciers collapsing. "Rot is a language, decay a prayer. You gifted us a feast." They dragged me to the basement. The walls were alive now, carpeted in undulating tumors that pulsed with stolen memories. In the center hung a grotesque altar, a fusion of Henrik's ribcage and Mara's spinal column, fused with jagged ice and throbbing alien tissue. The thing forced my hand into the structure. Agony. A million winters coursed through me. I felt their hunger, ancient and insatiable, a craving for the rot festering in human souls. Guilt, they showed me, is delicious. It ripens in the dark. When I woke, dawn was a gray wound on the horizon. The house stood normal, save for the frost etching my skin in fractal patterns. And the whispers. Always the whispers. "They're coming again tonight. I've laid out Mara's parka, Henrik's spectacles, an offering. Maybe this time they'll take me instead of the memories. But some hungers can't be sated." Our city had one rule, and one rule only. On the last night of every month, we had to be asleep before 6 p.m. No one ever explained why, but our neighbors warned my parents that it was best to gather in a big closet and sleep together. At first, my parents laughed it off, until my cousin came to stay with us for a week. It was the last night of the month when she and I stayed up late, talking and laughing in my room. My room had a large window, something I had never thought much about before. By the time we finally decided to lay down, it was already past 8 p.m. That's when we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 long, deliberate taps against my window. We froze, eyes locked in silent fear. Then again, tap, tap, tap. This time it was more impatient, more insistent. The knocks continued, relentless. My breath was shallow, my body rigid. Eventually exhaustion took over, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. My cousin didn't. At some point during the night, she got up. Maybe curiosity got the better of her, or maybe she thought it was all a prank. I'll never know. When I woke up the next morning, the room was ice cold. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, only to see my window shattered. Glass scattered across the floor, blood smeared everywhere. A note was left behind. The handwriting looked eerily like my cousin's, but the ink wasn't ink. The smell told me that much. When the town heard what had happened, they told us that this was the warning. The police wouldn't help. They couldn't. And so, we followed the rule without question. From then on, every last night of the month, my family and I crammed into the closet, waiting out the night. I am now 27, and I still do this. I have 2 dogs and a cat. I've learned to be prepared. Blankets, pillows, water. My pets knew the routine, except for my cat, a tiny kitten who had never experienced one of these nights before. That night, my mother had given her a toy that made tapping sounds, and she loved it. So when the real tapping started, she thought it was her toy. Before I could stop her, she darted out of the closet, slipping through the barely open door. The window shattered instantly. I saw it. A clawed hand, massive and unnatural, snatched my cat. Its head, shadowed and grotesque, peeked into the room. It didn't see me, or at least I don't think it did. I tell myself that if I had pulled my cat back in time, she might still be here, or maybe we both would be gone. Now I train my dogs to run to the closet the moment the sun sets on that night. I don't take chances anymore, but the thought lingers in my mind. Did it see me? Will it come back for me? Growing up, this was normal. Now I wonder what's really out there, waiting in the dark, tapping at the glass, just waiting for someone to be too curious. Waiting for me.